Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connections, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Hello and welcome to a new episode of Back to Basics. I'm your host, Leticia Latino, and I'm pumped about today's guest, the Repositioning Expert, award-winning marketeer Chala Dincoy, a few years back when she was the keynote speaker at a conference that I usually go to. I was highly impressed by her presentation style, as well as with some of the powerful marketing strategies she shared on how to change a company's messaging to attract more decision makers. Her experience includes working for companies such as Pepsi, Frito Lay and BIC, to name a few. She has written several books, including the recently published How to Make Anybody Like You in 7 Seconds or Less, and is regularly featured expert on major television networks such as ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox. And now she can proudly add Back to Basics to that impressive list. Hello and welcome, Chala, to the show.
Picture with all the big logos for sure.
Exactly. How you doing? Welcome.
Good. It's great. It's great to be a guest. I'm hoping that it's going to be, I just saw a change on the screen, but hopefully it's recording our screen. But if not, our listeners can enjoy our chat.
Exactly. No, I'm super excited. I was very impressed from the moment I met you. You are a person full of energy, and I know that when you do your talks in every conference that I see you, people come in one way and they exit the meeting in a very different way. You definitely empower them.
Thank you. And I remember you ran right up to me. I remember being very impressed with you as well. And I remember you kindly waited until everybody, was kind of like in line, and you got what you wanted. And I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be sharing whatever wisdom that I can with your listeners.
Thank you, Chala. And I'm not sure if you're that familiar with the show, but basically what we do is we go and we take the listener into our guest childhood. So we want to hear about who, as I always say, little Chala was and what interests you. And then, we're going to go into what you're doing now and how your passions or the things that you used to be excited about are manifesting in your life now. So can you share a little bit about your childhood with us?
Yeah, and it's really interesting. There seems to be a theme about going back to childhood, because just this past week, another women's group that I belong to asked for our childhood photos and one thing we would say to ourselves back then.
Oh, interesting. There you go. So you have it fresh.
And so they asked for, like the little baby picture with a headshot. And then they did a whole, a series on all these women about what they would say to themselves. And for me, it was start a business sooner. And I don't know, how old were you when you started your business?
Well, I am into the family business, so it's a little bit different. But yeah, probably 30.
Really?
32.
So even though it was a family business, you didn't grow up in it?
No, I grew up in it. I just rejected it for a long time. I didn't want to be part of the family business. Not for nothing bad, but I wanted to earn my position in it. I just didn't want it to be given to me.
Well, that's interesting. So I wish I had started at 30. I started to certify for things at 30, and then I actually started at 40, believe it or not. So now I'm 50. I just turned 50, and it's better than, my life is better than it's ever been on every front, personal, business, money, love, child, all those things that I ever wanted. So as a little kid, I was the second child of an immigrant family, such as yourself. I mean, my parents came from a country called Turkey. They were both, my mom was a lawyer, my dad was an engineer, but they were both, raised in this poverty mentality. And I actually spoke about this, which is a very personal topic, at NASDAQ. And, I don't know if you were at the talk where I was talking about NASDAQ, but when you
I was.
you remember me talking about it. So that was a very personal and scary topic where I talked about, how my parents had this real fear around money, and they gave that fear to us as children.
And why do you think that was, in terms of what money would do to you if you had? That was the fear?
They just had always fear of not having enough because they were immigrants and they came with very little. Even though they were, professionals, obviously you come from a family where, there was a business and wealth, and hopefully, not every entrepreneur has wealth. But hopefully you came from the kind that was, had steady wealth.
Yeah, well, I kind of understand it very well because my parents actually are Sicilian and they had to immigrate Italy after Second World. I mean, it was a few years back, but my dad left Italy in the 50s where really there were no opportunities in Italy left for them, and they had to start from scratch in a different place.
Yeah.
And so also, at the beginning was very tough because even my dad said he had to donate blood for like 2 years to get my brother out of the hospital because he didn't have how to pay for the hospital.
So you totally know. Yeah, they know.
So, I think everybody can, relate in a way or the other of some sort of scarcity. Even if it's not money, it's probably some other source of scarcity as in growing up. But so, I totally see it. So they were always, afraid that there wasn't going to be enough. And so growing up, what kind of child were you? Were very active, I assume, knowing you now.
I tell you, I had a very big mouth. Like, I always got in trouble. And I still get in trouble. I still get in trouble for my big mouth because for whatever reason, I'm not afraid to say what I think. No matter what consequence happens, I have to speak my truth. What I have learned, though, is to temper it in a way that it doesn't hurt people, because that's just not, the intention is very important to me. I have a 10-year-old and, we talk about some of the things that he says in trying to be funny, because he's trying, he's the funny guy. He takes something funny to school every day. Like today he was wearing his spy glasses. Another day he took a wig. Another day he took a mask. Like he just wants to make people laugh. And he's the funny guy. And I was the same way. So, and sometimes, it doesn't strike the right chord. So, I'm teaching him about the intention of kindness. So that I was the kind of person who always said what I thought. And I was always, getting in trouble with my parents and getting in trouble just all around. And it didn't serve me well when I started working for corporations, large corporations. Did you ever work for corporations, or were you always, with your dad?
No, I work for 2 big companies, Merrill Lynch and Nortel. So I had to also learn to navigate the corporate world.
Political, for sure. And I really wasn't born to be political. And you do know about the politics of large corporations. I couldn't, if I thought my boss's ideas weren't good, 3 seniors in the room and him and me, I was the lowest on the totem pole, I would say it. And that did not sit well with anybody. So, my upward mobility in corporations was always limited. And then I found when I started my own business that people actually hire me for it. People actually want to interview me for it. They want to, get me on their podcast, or they want me to speak at their conference and they have dubbed me the no nonsense, coach. So, I always believe that who you truly are is the reason why you're here. And the expression of who you are inspires so many people, teaches so many people in exactly the way that you are. So if you try to change it or tamp it or, lie about it or mimic somebody else, you're doing a disservice to yourself and to them.
Interesting. I couldn't agree more. And do you feel that little girl that grew up and now went into corporate and now has your own business, do you think that's very authentic to who you still are? Or do you think...
I should have started way earlier.
Okay. So you would totally, but you would still do the corporate thing or not? You would
No, because I now meet people who are much younger than me and who've never worked in corporations, and they're toying with the idea of having their own business. And I'm like, just do it. And they feel like they need the experience of a corporation. And yeah, it's not bad to have that, but it's not necessary, because with the tools of marketing, that I teach my clients, I can make them into experts. You pump out enough content, you study one specific topic enough, you will know more about it than most people. And then you pump out enough content about that same topic, you're going to look like an expert.
Yep. No, absolutely. The time has changed. I can definitely believe that. And that's why I guess, for example, I got exploring into podcasting and other things like, okay, what are we not doing that the younger people are doing, and into connecting, right? And into exploring the possibilities. But I definitely feel that the corporate world, at least it gave me that feeling that I wouldn't always get it my way. In a sense, where you have, maybe you want to go one way, but you have to kind of accept others people's viewpoints, which is also useful, because in life you don't always get to call the shots.
Leticia, every experience I think is valuable, good or bad. Everything, there is no failure. It's just a learning. It's just a result. So to say that working for corporations, or my 20 years of working for corporate and giant ones, say that I learned nothing or that it wasn't valuable would be wrong. But for people who think that they need it to have a successful business, that's where I say no. You don't. There's other experiences. There's other ways you can get that experience, or different ones. That's all. And you've maybe met people, businesses that feel like they're not enough. And I do this. I'm a certified coach, so I used to work with a lot of coaches, and their median income, I don't know if you've ever met coaches, but the International Coach Federation published their median annual income of their members. And can you guess how much it is?
I have no idea.
It's $25,000. So it's like poverty level. And, and I met so many of those wonderful people who are trying to heal the world, and yet they're broke and they cannot heal the world. So what they, believe is, if I go and get another certification, if only I go and get another degree, if only I work for a corporation, if only. And we do this all the time, and mostly women, that if only they think they get something outside of themselves, that they'll be successful. And it's not true. And it's true for life, right? It's true for life. If only I had, lost 5 more pounds. If only I got a, facelift, I could go and make a speech.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And in fact, in some of the research I was doing for this interview, I bumped into one of your articles, and you wrote something very interesting, which is your why. And it says, my why is to help entrepreneurs break out of their childhood conditioning that limits them.
Yeah, because that's mine. That's my wound.
Exactly. And so I wanted to go there. So you feel that there were conditionings that were limiting you before you kind of got your eureka moment, to use another expression you use in your...
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I told you about how my parents were like, very tight with money because they didn't have much and they were always worried. But, what they taught us is always be risk-free. So don't, put money on your credit cards, or don't put debt on your credit cards. Don't borrow from anyone. Study really hard so you could work for large corporations so you'll have guaranteed high income. None of it was true. I was restructured maybe every time I had a job because I worked for giant corporations that were continually restructuring, or they were doing mergers. So, I mean, I mostly worked in the packaged goods industry. So in Canada, it's just been completely changed. Even in the world, it's changed.
Well, trust me. I work for a Canadian company, as I mentioned, Nortel, and I saw it go for $150,000 employees to zero, going bankrupt, being one of the biggest Canadian companies there was in telecom. And that's actually where I made my switch. Like, I saw that going down that way and people getting fired, and my whole group, every day we would get to work. Is it today? Is it tomorrow? No one knew when we were all going to be laid off. And it's just, it wasn't for me. I couldn't take it. So I volunteer and say, give me the package. I'll happily leave. And that's what I did, and that's when I joined my family company. Yeah, it's brutal working for those.
It's like a bloodbath, right? It's a bloodbath. I have a friend who's doing that with a large pharmaceutical whose name I won't use, but it's literally, he's like, should I take a vacation? Everybody's getting fired right now. And like, it's not because of the economy, and it's not because the company's doing badly. It's because they have a new mandate. They just have a new mandate to reduce. And there is a firing notice for someone every day, and that's how he feels. It's never going to change. That's the corporate world. Well, you and I talking here 20 years from now, it's always going to be the same.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I spoke about this in my last episode, which was the number 20, by the way. So I'm an official podcaster, but I share some of my own journey. And to me, that experience was very hurting for my own ego, because we were part of like the top talent team, and we were given retention bonuses, and we were praised left and right by the company. And then one day, and then the next day you're jobless. And so it was really hard to swallow, especially when you're younger and when you think, okay, I'm made and I'm climbing, and then you have to start from zero again. And so it took a while to stand back, and I took 6 months. I spent the whole layoff package, whatever. I said, I'm going to go travel and explore, because it just needed to take a break. But yeah, it was an experience. So that was my compelling event. Do you have one specific event or things that made you reprogram yourself and get rid of those childhood conditioning limitations?
No, I did. It was literally a coach. And there was a man sitting next to me at a woman's, and I don't know if you've heard of eWomen Network. It's a very large U.S. chain of networking. So they used to have a very big Toronto chapter. So we were at their Toronto dinner, and there was a man sitting there, and it's a women's event. So I didn't even think they were allowed. So I said, we started talking, and I said, how are you allowed to be in here? And he said, oh, my partner is a woman, and she's here, and I'm with her. And they had driven from Syracuse for that 3 hours for that meeting. They drove their butts down to Toronto. Anyway, so up to Toronto. And he became my coach. He asked for $15,000 to work with me. And it was only for 3 months, and it was 20 minutes per call. It was very small, short amount of time for $15,000. And I said, I can't afford that. I've never even paid $15,000, not even for my down payment for my house. I was a certified coach, so I hired coaches, but always in cheaper programs, always cheap coaches, always group programs where it's only a couple of thousand, right? And I made myself feel good saying, oh, every coach should have a coach and I have one. But it never got me anywhere, because all the problems that were in the group, I was way above those. I was way beyond that, and it used to bore me to death. I never got any return from the investment. And so this guy, he said $15,000 for that limited amount of time. I was like, oh my God, I don't have the money. And what he taught me in that moment, he said, if you make the decision out of the same mindset that's gotten you to this age and to this income, then you're never going to change your income, because that has been baked into you from your childhood. And if you don't break that barrier, you're never going to be able to break it. Because if you can't pay $15,000, you can't ask for $15,000. That's what he said. And he scared me a little, because I wanted to. I wanted to do what he was saying, and I believed him. Whatever reason, I have no idea. I just met him once, and I believed him. So I actually called my coupon clipping retired mother. I borrowed money from her. I didn't have savings. I didn't have a reserve, and I didn't have many clients. So I called my credit card companies, and I increased my limits. So I broke it up into two, because it's 15 US is a lot more Canadian. It's 30% more. So then I got all this money, and he said to me, Chala, if you pay it all up front, you're going to do yourself a service, because you'll know the feeling of paying a huge amount of money into your investment in yourself. So I did it. I paid it all in one. I almost threw up, and I didn't sleep really for a month and a half until I actually got my first sale of $15,000. And I remember telling my parents on FaceTime, their eyebrows disappeared off the screen. It was hilarious. It was just like a Big Bang Theory, when Rajesh's parents, I don't know if you ever watched that show.
Yeah.
So that's my story. That was my aha, because he taught me that my childhood mentality around money and around investing is keeping me from making more money. So that year, as soon as I sold my first $15,000 package, I sold a $25,000 package. And then I kept going and going. And I tripled my income at the age of 40 that year that I did that. So I broke that ceiling. I was able to break that ceiling. And so I tell that story to people who are having difficulty, letting go of 25,000. I mean, I'm talking about the smaller, the bigger clients. It's just a corporate decision. They have it in the budget, and they can see the ROI, and they're seasoned executives and they've hired other consultants before, and it's not a big deal. But for the little guys like me that work with me, it's a big deal to shell out 15, 25,000. So they don't do it easily, and most of them can't do it in terms of their mindset. It's not that they wouldn't get it back or that they can't afford it. They will buy, they'll buy something else for that. They'll spend it on a website, but they would to spend it on a consultant on strategy, they can't fathom it. So I tell them my story about, the mindset and what it did. And very, very few of them can change.
Yeah, no, it's a quite impressive story.
Yeah, it's so locked into them. So that's one of the only things really that I would say is there's a few people in the world that can truly change their childhood conditioning. And really in one moment, because I believe that decisions are made in one moment. And you spend a ton of time justifying it, either to yourself or to, the people around you. But that's what I think that's my aha moment was this, this coach telling me you're never going to be any different if you just keep doing the same thing in terms of your fear. That was my biggest fear, and it still is, but it's at a different level now. I've moved it up, right?
Yeah, but at that point, were you still working in the corporate world, or you had left already?
No, I left. I didn't.
You had left.
I didn't have any cushion. I had no savings. At the time, my husband couldn't afford to pay for all of our expenses by himself, and I didn't have enough clients. We could not afford a $15,000, deficit from our budget. But see, what he taught me is what rich people or children of rich people think. And, this is kind of Warren Buffett's kids, let's say. He teaches them to look at investment as how much is it going to make me? But poor people, they look at it as how am I ever going to replace that? That's gone. But they don't see, so rich people, they look at it as, oh, the $1,000 I'm paying or $15,000 is going to get me $100,000 this year. And it did. It got me way more. In a cumulative, it's got me more than $1 million over the last couple of years, right? So that's the difference between the mindset, and I try to teach that as much as I can.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. A lot of the reading I've done, it's always revolves around that you, even Deepak Chopra is a big advocate of, it has to come from a place of abundance, where your decision have abundance as the core rather than scarcity.
Yes.
And it's a big change in your mindset. Absolutely.
It's huge. Yeah.
So would you say that obviously, because back to basics is our main purpose is to think, what can we do in our lives to feel happy with who we are? Because part of, and many of the guests I've had over are people that, in my mind, have been very successful, are staying connected to the true essence. So obviously for what you do, you're so passionate about what you do. Yeah, I can tell you love helping people. So kind of you are in your calling, but many people are, stuck in jobs that they kind of like, but they also forget who they are about or what they enjoy doing, or how do they feel connected to really that person that started the journey as a little child and now is an adult and now has kids and it's absorbed by day-to-day routines. And I'm sure you see a lot of those people as your customers probably when you go and get to a coach. I would think that's also part of it, right?
The whole world, do you know how many people, what percentage of the population owns their own business, Letitia?
No, I don't.
So it's 10% in the US. So the majority of everyone you see and everyone around you really typically is working for someone else. So it's such a different thing to be happy working for someone else versus yourself. And I'll tell you, when you're working for someone else, the way that people have resolved this joy issue is to spend their free time doing the thing that gives them joy. So they, like the procurement manager at my last company used to do freaking marriage counseling at his church and run marriage camps through his church for very little money. And it was more like his, passion, his love. Another woman had she worked in the shipping department and she had a floral arrangement business on the side. So that was her passion. Now, none of them ever wanted to do enough to make them full-time businesses. That none of them wanted to give up anything like you and I give up in terms of time, resources, energy, money to grow those hobbies, but they stay as hobbies. So that's in the corporate world. I think that's how people put up with it, because very few of those 90% are actually doing jobs that they absolutely excel in and love and just, get off on in the perfect conditions with the exact people that they want to be surrounded with and during the exact hours they want to work. Very few of those 90%, right? I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
that's how they do it, is they have their, and when I used to work full time, this was my passion. This was my hobby. I would go and speak at night at association meetings and have clients at lunch. That's how I transitioned. But it was my passion. It was my hobby. And then at other free lunches, I would write my blogs. So that's how I transitioned. And I never really thought I'd ever leave my day job because it paid well. And I had a lot of freedom. I was pretty senior. I had just given birth, all those things. So, but, I was able to actually move. I was able to leave. So thank God.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think I have many friends that work in the corporate world that they get offered either better jobs and they say, no, I'm perfectly as I am. And they're perfectly content and happy and they find their fulfillment or what makes them tick, as I say in this podcast. And they're happy people too. It's so I never see it like a black and white kind of thing. I say that there's in the world there are many needs, and each one of us has the calling of fulfilling certain needs. But definitely, I believe that the fear that a lot of people have of leaving that cushion job, of leaving, the steady check, and affects a big chunk of people that say, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can be a writer. I don't think I can be an actor. And they allow those limitations, self-imposed limitations, to rule their lives, basically.
Yeah, but they compensate for it through doing it on their own or finding an outlet for it or doing it as a volunteer or having some creative form, in their lives of that thing. And then for, what makes entrepreneurs happy, I think sadly, a huge part of it is the success of our business.
Yeah, it's your baby, right? It's your baby. You see it being born and you give it a personality and a life, and then you wanted to see it succeed. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's a hobby for you and you don't need it to live or succeed or whatever, which is often not the case. Even if businesses are doing really well, the owner does feel like it's their baby. And I've never met anybody who's truly living in joy when their business is doing badly, right? I mean, it has to be very low priority for them. Their business has to be very low priority for them to still be in joy while their business is bleeding.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of stress too. I always say people fantasize about being your own boss and they glamorize only the good part, but there's also the part where you have to pay people and maybe there's no money in the bank, where your customer hasn't paid you, where you have to go on vacation, but you really can't because you have to do payroll and you have to sign that big contract. So I always say there's two sides of the story, and unless you really enjoy it, you're not going to enjoy even being your own boss. You're probably going to enjoy more finding that you're getting the check on top of your desk. You don't know where the money came from. You just know you're being paid.
I love, I follow a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yes, I love him.
Yeah. So I love, he says that if you can go and work for someone else, you're not a true entrepreneur. Because if you can actually stomach working for someone else, so he looks at it from a can't even go there kind of thing. Like, it's just, you were born this way. Like, you can't even make yourself do that. And, you and I both have made ourselves do that, but he has a really hard stance about who is an entrepreneur and who isn't.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I like that quote from him.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I've read his books, and I actually got into this whole social media because I read Crushing It. That was one of the defining factors after Social Media for Dummies. That served me well too.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, you have to go to every source of information to try to ponder where you're going, right? So I know, and because I know you're a busy person, I know you also have gotten into writing books, and you just published a book. So I definitely want to give you the time to talk about your book so our audience can hopefully buy it and learn how to get everybody to like you really quick.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the reason for the 7 seconds, how to get anyone to like you in 7 seconds or less, is because Harvard University did a study where they found that it takes 7 seconds to make a first impression. Only 7 seconds. So that's why I wrote the book about how to make the first impression in 7 seconds, because I'm a elevator pitch coach, and the elevator pitch, the first 7 seconds is critical. What you say, how you say it, and and in the book there's other stuff around body language, because there's certain stuff you're communicating so much just in your presence, in your energy, and your facial expressions and your body expressions, everything other than your words too. I mean, your words, I help you with your words in the pitch fixing, but there's so much else that goes into it. And they don't even know, people themselves don't even know that they've, made that conscious decision about you, but because it's unconscious, but it definitely comes out in research. So it's really fascinating. I did a ton of research to be able to write that book, and I wrote it for a TV appearance circuit that I'm doing, where I auditioned for, was it like 14 or 13 TV producers in New York City 2 months ago, and I was pitching to get into their TV stations, and I was able to get like most of them, luckily.
Well,
and
congrats.
Yeah, thank you. So in fact, I'll be on TV in Orlando in a week. I believe it's in a week. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So this is why I wrote the book for that TV book tour. But it's also, a fascinating topic that goes hand in hand with my specialty, which is teaching people how to do elevator pitches.
No, and you are a magician at that. I've heard you speak already a few times, and I follow you, and I invite anybody listening to the podcast. All Chala's information will be on the show notes, but you definitely have to check this out, because as I see it, and I'm in sales, it's not only about selling a product. You sell yourself too in every interaction, as you just said. So this is not only for entrepreneurs or people that, I don't have I have a product to sell. This is also about how you are perceived in your world, in your environment, in your circles. So it's something that it's worth considering. It's like, how am I presenting myself? Just exactly what you were sharing, Chala.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And it's so lovely to finally talk to you, about personal stuff, which is great.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I cannot finish the interview or end the interview. Is there any one particular thing that makes you tick? If you have an hour to yourself where you can say, yes, I'm going to do something that really hits my core. Is there something specific that you go do?
It's kind of boring, but I am a little bit addicted to the gym. So
Okay.
I have to work out every day. I have to work out every day.
Well, it's not boring if it makes you tick, and then it makes you look great. So you, I think, have a win-win situation.
I hope so.
Yes, you do. Well, Chala, thank you so much. It's been great chatting with you, and I look for many more of your successes.
Thank you, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And until the next time.